that could be really fun, but down the road when you look at the Big 12.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very deep and I think easily by far soon to be the most powerful basketball conference going forward. It's going to be a lot of fun, very deep league, a hell of a battle.
Live from the heart of Lincoln, America, welcome to Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome into Ticket Weeknights. I am Harrison Arens. Going to be going solo all the way up until 9 o'clock. Well, I shouldn't say be going solo. I will be bringing on a phone guest at about the second segment around 8:25, 8:30 p.m., and that will be Matthew Schaefer, who just won the Nebraska Amateur Golf Cup right here in Nebraska. And again, I want to talk to him. I grew up with the guy in Northeast Nebraska, and, you know, he's always been an athlete, but golf's always really stuck out for him. And, you know, I'm not sure if it's fair to say everyone saw it coming. He's an incredible talent. The dedication he puts into the sport of golf is just insane. And growing up with a guy in high school, you know, I got tons of stories about what that guy did to get his game to the next level. So, again, be sure to stick around for that. Matthew Schaefer, he'll be on the second segment over the phone. I get to talk about him and his golf journey. But for now being, you know, normally I like to turn this hour into kind of a hoops IQ check podcast, what I usually like to call it. But tonight, you know, there isn't a lot of NBA news going around. We'll talk about Mark Jackson for a little bit, stepping down or stepping away from ESPN. That one right there, kind of a bummer. I will say Mark Jackson was definitely one of my favorites. He's got some of the best catchphrases, hand down, man down. You know, it's kind of a bummer to lose him. Out of all the, you know, play-by-play guys, I'd say he's up there in terms of some of the best, especially with where it's at right now. I just don't know, you know, who that replacement is going to be. But anyways, that's really about it in NBA news. We've talked about the midseason tournament multiple times already, how that's going to play out. Again, I think it's really just a ploy to get attention during the heavy football season. The fall, I mean, football dominates. Football's king, at least here in the U.S. It's what it's been. When the NFL's on, it trumps NBA, and it does it every single time, and nothing's going to change that because there's 82 regular season NBA games, and, you know, not even close to that in the NFL. So that's always going to kind of be in the case, but there's not much else to say about the midseason tournament other than, do we think the real all-stars, you know, the Steph Currys, Kawhi Leonards, Paul George, LeBron James, like, are you going to get those guys to go in there, compete at their highest level? Now, guys like Jason Tatum, I'm not as worried about. You know, those younger guys, I feel like they're going to come in and want to compete right away, you know, especially if you're a Jason Tatum, you haven't won anything yet. So it might feel good to prove to yourself like, hey, at least we can take care of this midseason tournament. So I think it's not just for the superstar players, but especially those older superstars. And then especially the ones that already have a ring, a real finals ring. You know, how much does that $500,000 mean to them? Because if you're an Apex player, one of the best at the position, you've already won a ring, you've already, or at least been close to a ring, you got the money already. You probably got endorsement deals. It is $500,000 enough to make you care about playing some serious minutes, hard minutes in the midseason tournament. Now, it is single elimination. That helps it a lot. The way they kind of make this work is you're kind of setting yourself up for that midseason tournament through regular season games. So there is an argument to say, why wouldn't they push themselves? You know, the max amount of games you can play is, if you're in the championship game, you will actually play 83 regular season games as opposed to 82. That, or I shouldn't even say 83 regular season games. You'll just have one extra that doesn't count towards the regular season, but count towards that $500 million, or excuse me, $500,000, 500,000 purse, a little extra spending money in that midseason tournament. So again, I just don't know how well it's going to work out. I'm curious. If I'm being honest, when they came in with the play-in tournament, I was a little shaky on that. Wasn't sure how that was going to turn out. And the more they explained it, the more it made sense. And it actually turned into be a great product. You know, there's been some teams, we haven't really seen it break anything yet. I think that was one of the fears, was you would see a team like the Miami Heat, beat the Bucks and a team that, just a playing team that doesn't feel like they belong. Well, the Miami Heat prove they belong because they didn't only beat the Bucks, they beat everyone else over in the Eastern Conference and made themselves all the way up into the finals versus the Nuggets to actually get to a game 5. So again, it hasn't been broken yet. I think until we see a team that we all kind of feels a little fluky get past that certain point, maybe we'll look at it a little more sourly. But right now, the play-in tournament seems like a really well, oiled machine. It worked out great. I don't even think Adam Silver expected it to work out as good as it has. But, some of those play-in games, they do better numbers than your actual playoff tournament games. Yeah, there's just something about that single elimination game excitement. It's what makes March Madness so much more exhilarating than you hate to say it than your NBA playoffs. The NBA playoffs are exciting, but it's not really exciting until you start getting to your real juggernauts. When you get those superstar matchups that you're kind of hoping for. If you get we missed it, but it's in the NBA, it's kind of like you're hoping for matchups. March Madness, you're just hoping for madness. With the NBA, we never got it, but for the longest time, it was like, man, are we going to see a Kobe Bryant versus LeBron James? Big matchups like that you're building up to because it's best of 7. The best team should make it, but there's always a chance that, you just don't play your best game. And that was the case for the Bucks, last season. There's no reason you might be able to argue that the Miami Heat should have won that series. There's no way they should have won it in the way they did. Giannis being hurt, coming back, not full strength. I think that definitely had a huge part. And the Miami Heat, they were just hitting threes at a ridiculous clip, something that they weren't doing at all throughout the regular season. So again, that's pretty much all we have for NBA. And again, if you guys want to add more to the context for NBA, we can go through some silly stats. I just saw a stat today. James Harden has actually shot more free throws in his career than field goals, which is amazing. You might say in today's NBA, that's not that crazy, but just keep in mind, guys like Kobe Bryant, who were constantly called, they got all their points from the free throw line. Kobe Bryant only shot around 8,000 field goals. He shot around 11,000 field goals and only had actually about 8,000 free throw attempts. So James Harden is on his own in that one. There's never been a player like James Harden that can get to the free throw line as often as he does and really just sell the fouls. And I shouldn't even be that hard on selling the fouls. Some of that he deserves credit for. His ball handling and his just ability to really make you second guess yourself. We saw it over and over again. His ball handling when he was really at his peak, that's the point when he was crossing guys over on the Houston Rockets, breaking their ankles, staring them down before he took the 3. That's peak James Harden. So part of that makes sense, right? If you're that elusive and you have guys second guessing themselves all the time, you're going to get some fouls. But it's still a crazy stat nonetheless to imagine that you're going to take more free throws than actual shots as an NBA player through a long career at this point for James Harden. Again, to me, that just kind of speaks to the era we're in. And I think they're getting better on it. I still want to see less free throws. You got to start catering more to the defense. I think that's what people want to see. I'm not saying lean all in on the defense. I'm saying you got to make it more fair. It's not fun to watch ticky-tack fouls of your best players, and they got to sit down in the third quarter because, they barely bump someone with an elbow. Small stuff like that. I think Adam Silver's working on it. You hear it year in, year out with these refs. We're going to stop calling these flop calls. About 2 months into the season, it runs away from them. So I really hope this season's different. I get so tired of seeing it over and over again where they say they're going to start cracking down on these flops, and then a few months in, it just kind of goes out the back door. If Adam Silver wants to be one of the greatest GMs, you got to, if you're going to commit to doing something like that, you got to commit. You can't do this rollback thing we see every year. And again, if you guys want to join the show, start our Heyman text line 402-464-5685, as well as you want to put a face to the voice, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Allo channel 951 for our Allo subscribers out there. So again, I think that's pretty much all I really got for NBA talk. Unless you guys wants to throw something in there, we can break it down. There's some teams we can kind of guess their future. Chicago Bulls unfortunately, that's my team, and they have a really bad trajectory. The Lonzo Ball, that's a tough deal right there. You can't really predict that one. You got DeMar DeRozan, who's going to be a free agent next season. Vucevic re-signed on his deal. Not really one that you'd hope he re-signed on, but obviously he's going to take the contract extension. And then Alex Caruso, just another bad deal with injuries. So they got a full slate of players. They're losing talent, not getting anything back. They're just going to have to watch them walk away because how strapped they are financially. It's tough. Zach LaVine's going to have a huge number on him. You're kind of just, you're stuck with that roster, and it was good for a couple of fun regular seasons, but unfortunately, I'm not even going to say it's on the GMs. My biggest problem with the Bulls is the Vucevic trade. I think they could have done way better on that. I never liked the trade to begin with, and the contract extension, just not what I ever wanted to see, especially with what they have right now. It's just sad, right? You got a talented roster, but health has been a concern. You got free agents coming up this upcoming season that they're going to be able to just walk away. It's just a bad spot. So the Bulls, they might have an argument for being a team in the worst position, despite having better talent than what you might consider the Wizards. The Wizards actually have pieces, though, to be in a rebuild. The Bulls, the Sacramento Spurs have those picks from that Vucevic trade. So that doesn't help those guys at all. So the Bulls, they got a long road ahead, to say the least. And I think if I had to vote for a team that's honestly in the worst position right now in the NBA, unfortunately, it would be my Bulls. They have more talent than some of the other teams, but long-term wise, there's no real window. It's going to have to be a rebuild at some point, which is super unfortunate for a guy like Zach LaVine, who's been so good for so long, just never really won anything. It took forever. It took until he had that year with Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso all on the same team before he was even able to win 4 consecutive games. And that's a guy like Zach LaVine who never lost hardly in high school and college, and then he gets to the Bulls, and that's all he's been doing is losing year in, year out. And, if he's happy in Chicago, that's great, but he might have to be happy with more losing. That's just kind of the situation they're in. Again, it's not necessarily all on, that whole organization's fault. There's some trades they maybe should have renegotiated. But again, a lot of it's just bad luck on health. Maybe if you had a healthier year with Lonzo Ball before he got hurt, who knows? That team was winning a lot of games. They're looking strong in the East. And once he got hurt, shortly after, Alex Caruso gets hurt. Now your elite defensive backcourt's just gone, wiped off the map. You're trusting guys like Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu to fill in those spots. Both of those guys don't play great defense. They're a little better offensively than both of those two, you can argue, at least in terms of creating their own shots. Lonzo Ball, better playmaker, but in terms of creating his own shots, he was never quite there unless he could find himself open on the three-point line. But again, it's just been a disaster for the Chicago Bulls these past few years, and it's a real bummer. That being my team, I really felt like with Lonzo Ball in the squad they had last couple of years ago when everyone healthy, I thought that was when they're going to turn it around. Let's see. He says, Harrison, we got random sex here. What is your favorite wing flavor and favorite Husker memory? So keep in mind, I'll answer this one, and this is from Rubber Duck from LinkedIn. This one, keep in mind, 24. So my favorite Husker play is probably going to be different than you guys. But favorite wing, you got to go with a Louisiana dry rub or lemon pepper dry rub. I'm a big on the dry rub kind of wings. I feel like you can't go wrong with those. And favorite Husker memory of all time. Honestly, if I had to favorite Husker memory of all time, if I had to put it in one play, it's the Kenny Bell block. I never got so excited for a block in my life. It was absolutely electric. I was pretty young at the time. I was at the point where, I was recognizing most of the roster in terms of, trying to figure out, the schemes and offense, defense. I wasn't there yet. I was at an age where I was just kind of picking up the players, and I was starting to play a little bit of football myself, but again, still at a younger age. But yeah, I remember that Kenny Bell block, and that really just fired me up. And then again, that's kind of where it just took off. I have a lot more memories packed in there. He chimes in. He says Colorado game with Sue. Yeah, that one, absolutely. That's another great game. Honestly, I might have to put a second opinion in there for one of my favorite Husker memories. I might have to go with Ndamukong Suh just brutalizing Colt McCoy. I mean, that was the biggest. You got two Heisman candidates, and it was pretty clear in that game one was better than the other. It was so dominant of a game from Suh that it was like, how did he not win this award? Ndamukong Suh during that game was probably one of the most incredible performances by a defensive lineman in a single game. I'd have to pull up the numbers again, but it was sacks, tackles for loss, literally throwing Colt McCoy, not tackling him, just throwing him to the ground. Those are memories when, watching that team, that Husker football team, I actually thought that defense, when you had Sue and you had Crick on that defensive line in particular, that's a defense that actually could have challenged anyone. I genuinely believe that. I genuinely believe that those guys at that point in time could have gone up against Alabama and actually probably could have gotten quite a few stops, maybe even some turnovers. I know Alabama was a juggernaut, but again, Texas was a good team. They were blowing teams out before that game, and they had no answers for our defensive line. It was a horrifying experience for Colt McCoy. And again, the offense, unfortunately, wasn't there. So I do say I think our defense compete with anyone. I think we could compete with Alabama defensively. Offensively, though, you got to score. And that was unfortunately the problem for most of that year was offense wasn't horrible, but it was up and down, right? It wasn't consistent enough. But with that defense, man, it really felt like the sky's the limit. And, that's the most black shirt I've seen. Being 24 years old, I know Rubber Duck Texan said he was 27. I think me and him probably can both agree that is the closest black shirts we've ever seen. And again, that's saying something for this Husker football program, right? I'm 24 years old. And my favorite memories of Nebraska football are a Kenny Bell block where we, in that game versus Wisconsin, we got blown out. You can't forget how badly we got blown out during that game. Yes, the block was awesome. The scoreboard, it was worse. It just really was. I don't care how cool that block was. That was a bad game under Bo Pelini. We got blown out. The best black shirts I've seen was that era when Domkin Sue and Crick on the line. And again, it was just dominant. But that's it. That's really it for a guy my age who's 24, and for Rubber Duck who's 27. I'd be surprised to see, if there's really any other times where we got a real feeling of the Nebraska black shirts. And that's kind of been the problem with this program. Now, I do like Matt Rule, everything he's saying, but we have to see it in person. Nonetheless, though, we do got to throw it to break because I do want to get to our guest up in the next segment. We will have Matthew Schaefer, who just won the Nebraska Amateur Golf Tournament right here in the state. So I want to ask him about his journey playing golf, what that meant for him. That's a pretty big thing to win right there. And it does set the stage for what's coming next up for Matthew Schaefer. So again, we'll have him on the next segment over the phone. I'm Harrison Arens, going all the way up until 9 o'clock. Feel free to chime in. Starter Heyman text line 402-464-5685. We'll throw it to break and be back on the other side.
I heard you and Jack had a disagreement.
Yeah, he says I keep things from him.
What are you gonna do?
He loves the Nebraska Lottery's Powerball First Millionaire of the Year promotion. So I'll buy a Powerball with Power Play and Double Play ticket before August 14th, and I could be one of 15 winners of $1,000. I'll also be entered for a chance to win a trip to New York City for New Year's Eve and a chance at $1 million.
$1,000? That should make him happy.
Depends.
On what?
If I decide to tell him I won.
Powerball top prize odds, 1 in 292 million.
What are you doing, hon? I thought we were going to pick up our Powerball with Power Play and Double Play tickets.
Hold on, I have to sit through this video meeting for work.
Do they realize how big the Powerball jackpot is?
I know, but these blowhards keep rambling on.
I don't want to miss my chance to win millions of dollars.
Well, neither do I, but how do I get these win bags to speed it up?
Dave, you're not on mute.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Play Powerball from the Nebraska Lottery. Top prize odds, 1 in 292 million.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza, the big one, all the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa,
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
Back to School Night is an important event. Plan to attend and help your child prepare for success. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. Let's get our students off to a great start. Make Back to School Night a priority. You'll meet your child's education team, learn about volunteer opportunities, and what you can expect in the school year ahead. Help us make a bright new beginning for our students this year.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
Summer is over. It's time to settle into your back-to-school routine. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. As teachers, we're excited to see our students again. Parents, help your child. Set a time and a quiet place for homework and establish bedtime routines so your child will be rested and ready to learn. Help us make a bright new beginning for our students this year.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Serve Nebraska believes that volunteers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers from across the state who serve their communities in outstanding ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
The Ticket Water Cooler.
There were a lot of situations where all you needed was that kind of 2-minute drill.
That was it.
Nebraska never was able, under Scott Frost, to really get one of those things going. The 2-minute drill and the ability to move productively, move the ball, has been a complete failure for Nebraska over the last few years. I think a big part of being successful in that is having a quarterback that can move. And we know Jeff Sims can move. Probably out of a lot of situations.
Back to the Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back into Ticket Weeknights. I am Harrison Arens, going all the way up until 9 o'clock. Again, if you guys want to join the show, feel free to chime in on the Sartor Heyman text line, 402-464-5685, as well as we're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Allo Channel 951 for our Allo subscribers out there. So again, for this guest, I do have a longtime friend. He actually grew up in the same area as I did in Northeast Nebraska. I've just known the guy for a long time. He's had a hell of a journey. And the reason I'm bringing him on here is because he actually did not too long ago on the 23rd of July, he would win the Nebraska Amateur Championship at Scotts Bluff Country Club. Excuse me. And it really was just an awesome performance, a bit of a comeback too, getting a couple of birdies there late to kind of come back and win it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him in. I have Matthew Schaefer, the winner of the Nebraska Amateur Golf Championship. Matthew, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. It's like I said, I grew up with you forever, man, and we came up from the same area, and you've always been big in the golf, always an athlete growing up. But what was it about golf that really drove you to pursue that out? Because you would wake up every day before school just to go to the range before classes started.
Yeah. So I wasn't into it at all growing up until I guess one of our mutual friends, Quinn Paulson, got me into it. And, since the time that I went with him, I don't think there was one specific thing about it, just like the whole game in general. And kind of like how he showed me that, from that point, I went one time with him, and from there it was like, there's no turning back. It's, something I knew I loved to do, and I began to like work hard at it from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're starting out, obviously we see where you're at today, but when you were first getting into golf, obviously you grew to love it. But was there any expectations for yourself that, hey, this is something I want to turn pro, or did that come on later in life?
Yeah, that definitely came a little later. Just when I first started, I was so new to it that I had no idea like what like it all entailed, let alone like the professional side of it. So I wouldn't say it was until a couple of years after, I was first introduced to it, until I started to, finally get a little bit better at it, that I, realistically thought that it was something that I could do professionally. So I would say like my junior, and specifically my senior year in high school was kind of when I really started to get a lot more belief, and knew that I was pretty decent at it, and that was a realistic possibility in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense, right? Junior, senior year. I mean, as a classmate, I know that's when your name started kind of staying on top of those leaderboards as well. But with you talking about that, let's kind of go back in time to when you're graduating high school. Because I know some of the story, it wasn't a smooth road for you. And I think that's the case for a lot of, athletes trying to figure out, in particular with golf, out of high school, what was your plan to go play college golf? Because I know it wasn't a smooth process. Where did you want to go? And if you don't mind, what ended up happening, and where'd you have to kind of bounce off to in order to keep this career alive?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't smooth. That's for sure. I had a few offers out of high school initially. Nowhere like crazy big though. And so I initially was going to go to University of Nebraska at Kearney. And days after I committed to go there, kind of out of nowhere, they came out with an announcement saying they were going to drop their golf program. So I knew I didn't want to go there, just to go to school.
Yeah,
I wanted to golf, that's for sure. And so I had a couple other options at that point, but nothing that really stood out to me. So I ended up eventually just going to Northeast Community College for 1 year right out of high school. So I ended up there right out of hay school, and yeah, so it definitely wasn't smooth. Like the whole University of Nebraska at Kearney thing, that happened pretty late senior year. So it was a lot all at once, and then it was a lot to figure out pretty late with graduation coming up.
Yep. And then so now you're at Norfolk Community College. You're golfing there, and what was kind of that process like? Because you were at a point where I don't want to discredit some of the other guys at those programs, but you were at a point where you looked like you didn't belong in a good way, if that makes sense. So what was kind of that next step for you from Norfolk Community College? And then, what was kind of the coach's advice through that process?
Yeah, like looking back, going into it, I didn't think it was like where I wanted to be at the time, but it all works out now. And I knew I was good enough to go other places. After 1 year there, most kids, go there for 2 years. I knew that after a year, I was definitely ready to move up. So, going in there, I wanted to play well, but I wanted to go in there with the intention of, myself along with the coach there, reaching out to other Division I schools around, as soon and early as possible, just to kind of get a head start on that. And essentially, I didn't want to be there more than a year, and it all worked out, where I was able to find an opportunity to move on after a year. And like looking back at 1 year there, I think I needed it in a sense, with just how everything worked out. And it ended up 1 year ended up being enough time. So.
And then from there, you do go to South Dakota State. What was it about, South Dakota State that really spoke out to you? Actually, I don't know if you knew this, but you're actually the only South Dakota State graduate to actually win the Nebraska Amateur Championship as well. So it worked out for those guys too. But what was it about South Dakota State that stuck out to you that made sense for that next kind of next step in your golf journey?
Yeah, it's actually weird. Out of high school, and even up until the time where I decided to go there, I didn't want to go anywhere north. I wanted to go somewhere where it was warmer down south. But I went up there would have a visit with the coach, and didn't really know much about the coach or even the program at the time. But when I went up there on the visit, the coach was outstanding. Casey Van Dam, that was the coach at the time I was there. I had a good visit with him. I was very impressed with what he knew, kind of like the tournament schedule he had set up for the program, and just like the expectations for the program in general. And I come to realize that they competed at like a high level against a lot of Power 5 schools. And so I didn't know that until I went up on that visit. And so, coming out of that visit, it was definitely somewhere where I could see myself going. And I guess that's kind of what did it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of see that talent on that's where you feel like you're ready to play at. So we don't have a ton of time left. So I kind of want to fast forward here a little bit. You graduate South Dakota State. And then from that point on, after graduation, I think a lot of golfers maybe don't know this. What does that process look like for those that really want to pursue that golf career after graduation? What does that look like? Obviously, you go on to play more tournaments, including winning that Nebraska Amateur Championship on the 23rd. But, what does that look like after graduation? How do golf players find themselves continue to just kind of grow into that professional territory?
Yeah. So essentially, like, to get to the PGA Tour, you just have to go through this series of tournaments. It's called qualifying school, or in a sense, Q school, in short. And so just going through those, and that's in the fall. And then, outside of that, there's just a bunch of mini tour stuff that you can do to stay sharp. And, you're playing against a bunch of other good professionals. And so it's kind of a mix of doing that qualifying school and then, just finding the right mini tour stuff. And then, hopefully you can find yourself doing well enough at Q school where you're able to get through and get to the PGA Tour. So kind of a mix of those two, and is a good route to go if that's what you're looking to do.
Absolutely. So with that being said, I kind of want to dive into the day already. Just, real quick before I dive into some more questions, just what did that mean, winning that Nebraska Amateur Championship? I saw you had a nice little champagne shower on Twitter too. At least it looked like champagne.
Yeah. No, that was definitely fun. Yeah, it meant a lot. It's a tournament I've played a lot in the past, and I've done well in the past. I've been in the lead after 2-3 days and just never have been able to play well enough to finish it off for 4 days. And I've seen how many good players have won that, like, up to this point, players that have turned professional and are doing very well. And there's just a lot of talent in the state of Nebraska in general with golf over the years. And so, I knew how hard it was to win. And so being able to win, it means a lot. I was able to beat a lot of really good players, and just to have my name in with all the other people that have won it means a lot. And, just kind of to represent the state of Nebraska for this year, it's pretty cool.
Yep. And like you said, it was a close match all the way through. You kind of stuck out in front early, and then had a couple bogeys on 4 and 5, but then when I actually come back on that last day, last 4 holes, in fact, you're actually birdied 2 of the last 4 to win by 1 stroke over Charlie of Omaha. So again, what was kind of that last day like? And just the nerves, being able to control the nerves, in a situation like that, what was going on through your head, just to kind of lock in, knowing that you needed to get those birdies just based on the competition around you. How'd you lock in, and, what's kind of that mindset going into those last holes?
Yeah. It's a place I've been in that position before. So, like, going into the last day, I wasn't overly nervous. I was pretty calm. And Charlie played really well on the front 9. And, like you said, I had a few bogeys there on 4 and 5. And so I almost felt out of the tournament in a sense, going into like the last 9 holes. And, even with 4 holes left, I was down 3 shots. So I somehow had to make up, 3 shots in the last 4 holes. And so I stayed calm. I really wasn't too nervous, and I was able to have a few good holes and make a few birdies, and I was able to make a few shots up. But I honestly wasn't really nervous until the last hole. I didn't think I had like a realistic chance of winning. Like, I knew I could, but like, he was just so far ahead the whole day that it wasn't until like the last hole when we were on the green where I actually had a putt to win. And so I wasn't super nervous until then, I would say. But overall it was a fun day, and Charlie played really well, and he'll have a lot of wins in his future. He's a great player and an even better person.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it all the more impressive, right? You go through this card, the scorecard, and you see through it. That was a pretty loaded group right there. So it does, means a lot, I imagine, to win that. Charlie, obviously a great golfer in himself, is going to have multiple opportunities in the future. But again, it was an impressive win. And where does that rank for you? You've been golfing for a while now. Where does that match or that round, rank for you in terms of where you're at in your golfing career?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. It's up there. I've had a lot of good rounds before. Like a lot of rounds where I've, scored better or I've had a lower score, but I would say, like, under the circumstances and, just how I finished it out, excuse me, the last couple holes specifically, it's right up there with one of the better rounds that I played, just kind of with the pressure and the circumstance of the tournament. And so it was a lot of fun to see myself be able to handle that and to play well and to finish it out. So I would definitely say it's up there with one of the better rounds that I've had in my career.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's always nice when it's a comeback win too. It definitely gets everyone excited. And because of that, it was such an awesome event. What's next for you, Matthew? You're on your journey right now. You're obviously coming off a great win right there. What's kind of next in your chapter for how you want to grow this career out?
Yeah. So I told myself after I graduated college, I was just going to probably stay playing as an amateur this summer. And then, see what that brought, and then possibly turn professional in the fall. So as of right now, I think that's my plan here in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to turn professional and start playing a few mini tour events, and then eventually go to Q school this fall and start my journey towards, trying to get to the next level.
Absolutely. Well, Matthew Schaefer, I appreciate the time as always. I know it's always easier to get someone in here, but man, I know you're busy through the summer, obviously working on your own golf career. I do appreciate the time though, and best of luck to you in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That was Matthew Schaefer, winner of the Nebraska Amateur Golf Championship. And again, I've known the guy for a long time, and he sounds humble, but he had a hell of a journey, and it wasn't always easy for him, especially I remember right out of high school, the whole his program getting dropped, it made for a bumpy road. And I think it's just a guy that, a lot of people can look at and say, you gotta roll with the punches, right? He could have gave up multiple times, refused to do so, and just continued to work on his craft. Have the golf simulator up in his barn he built himself when he was growing up in high school. And he's just kind of a good example that if you continuously work at your craft and you refuse to give up, there's no guarantees that you're going to be the best, but you're sure as hell going to give yourself a shot. So I thought it was great to bring him on there. And again, just shout out to Matthew Schaefer for making the time for that quick interview. But with that being said, we do got to throw it to our next break. Like I said, I'm Harrison. This is Ticket Weeknights. We're going all the way up until 9 o'clock. I will catch you guys on the other side.
This is where it happens. Long hikes with friends, kayaking adventures with family, more horseback riding, zipline gliding, rock face climbing, hammock camping fun than you could ever imagine. And it's all outdoors, amongst the trees and across the prairie, here beneath Nebraska skies. Plan an outing today at yournebraskaadventure.com. Sponsored by Nebraska Game and Parks, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Don't let biased algorithms or degree screens or exclusive professional networks or stereotypes. Don't let anything keep you from discovering the half of the workforce who are stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time to tear the paper ceiling and see the stars beyond it. Find out how you can make stars part of your talent strategy at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Getting experience to jumpstart a meaningful career can be difficult, and education can cost a fortune. Luckily, AmeriCorps can be the solution. With AmeriCorps, you'll earn a stipend and education award while helping people. Plus, you'll gain professional skills and make connections to help you build your career. If you're ready to start a career you can be proud of, visit serve.nebraska.gov/service to find a program for you. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Back to school night is an important event. Plan to attend and help your child prepare for success. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. Let's get our students off to a great start. Make back to school night a priority. You'll meet your child's education team, learn about volunteer opportunities, and what you can expect in the school year ahead. Help us make a bright new beginning for our students this year.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
I'm Chris Jackmick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is "My job is people, everyone is my business." But unfortunately, in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jackmick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
I always had to be so good, no one could ignore me. Carve my path with data and drive. But some people only see who I am on paper. The paper ceiling, the limitations from degree screens to stereotypes that are holding back over 70 million stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time for skills to speak for themselves. Find resources for breaking through barriers at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
On the Block with Strick and Austin.
Donnie Nelson kind of was doing a little, backyard boogieing with
Business
Mark,
on the side.
with Mark Cuban in the back rooms. Moves are being done and things are happening to which you don't really know about. That seems to me what happened in this situation. Things were going on, conversations was being had at the highest levels, and you're not in on the party.
Weekdays from 2 to 4 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Back to The Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back into Ticket Weeknights. I am Harrison Arens. This is the final segment of Ticket Weeknights, and we'll wrap up the rest of the night. But don't worry, we got more ticket content. Stay plugged into Twitch and Allo channel 951. That's got Ticket 24/7. Ticket content 24/7. So if you want to fall asleep to it, that's great for us. Feel free to do so. Just turn it on. Don't even got to listen. Just fall asleep to it. You can even mute it just so we get those numbers. But nonetheless, plenty of great content. And again, some of those shows, especially if you're missing some of those Sunday shows or Saturday shows, those shows have been really taking off for us lately. So in case you miss them, a lot of those shows do play later at night. So when we get done with our Ticket Weeknight stuff, a lot of that stuff falls around 9 o'clock. So in case you're missing shows like Lloyd's and Lincoln, The Breeze, Fitness Fanatics, all of those, Bigger Than the Score, Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, lots of great shows. Finish Line, get your happy on. If you're a Monday through Friday listener, you might be missing on some of what I consider, I try not to play favorites here, but I like a lot of those shows on those weekend programming. So again, if you're missing some of those, kind of catching those later at night, or just anytime you want on YouTube, they're all up there. Great stuff from there. Last week in particular, I did not realize Ramel Lloyd Sr. coached against the Ball brothers over in Chino Hills. That is, I felt like I need another 2 hours with him. I could not believe that he actually witnessed not just Lonzo, not just Jello, and not just LaMelo. He witnessed all three of them, winning it in 2016. Lonzo Ball and just being this insane draft prospect. And again, that's kind of why I talked about it earlier on the show. I'm just, as a Bulls fan, I'm just real bummed about how things have been going for the organization as a whole. But we look to the future, and hopefully we can just be competitive, because that's really what you're working for. If you're the Bulls, why even tank? You tank, you don't own your picks. So that's just kind of where they're at right now. We do got a little bit of time left. I'm curious. So you guys can chime in here. 402-464-5685. We don't got a lot of time, but one question that always gets quick responses is, how many wins does Nebraska get? What is the win total? What do you want? And what do you expect? If you got to put that into two separate answers, feel free to do so. But I've said it before. I got no idea, right? I'm anywhere between 5 wins and 8 wins. I think anything under 5 is just, I'm not going to put the clock on Matt Rule, but I'm going to be like, man, I thought we'd be better faster. Matt Rule, program builder, no question. Did it at Temple, did it at Baylor. And Baylor and Temple, they were they needed about 50 scholarships and they're getting 28. Like, the overall he had to do at those programs was insane. So that's why when I see a 1-11 for Baylor in his first year down there, I don't expect a 1-11 at Nebraska. He's got more players. He's got better, he's got way more financial support, way better, what do you want to call them? Buildings, infrastructure, facilities. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Way better facilities, more money, more trust, bigger fan base. Everything here, he's got more of. And all of that coincides with more talent as well, right? He's got the best talent he's had since he's had it at more, I shouldn't say the best talent because we don't know. If we're looking at just draft classes, right? We're just looking at the draft class rankings. This is better than what he's had at Temple, and this is better than what he's had at Baylor. But you look at how we've performed against the Big Ten and these Big Ten coaches as a whole. Don't sleep on Brett Bielema at Illinois. Some of these programs, I'm just saying right now, the Big Ten is full of good coaches. So you need a great coach if you're going to win consistently. So that's why I'm anywhere between 5 and 8 wins. It's hard for me, to put a pin on it. We got a couple in here, and a lot of these are going to be kind of the same, right? 6 wins, 2 of those in there. Win over Kansas State in Christmas time bowl game. That would be incredible. I'd love to see that. Yeah, just get to the bowl game, right? It's kind of embarrassing when you're the only Power 5 school with the fandom you have at Nebraska, with the resources, with the constant support and love for the program. There's no reason, absolutely no reason that we have not been in a bowl game yet. That's way too long of a drought for a Power 5. It's embarrassing, and Nebraska should wear that as embarrassing. We have to, at this point, work for the respect. No one's going to fear Nebraska before they even respect us. Teams right now, they might not respect us yet. There's no real reason to. Why would you? If you're Wisconsin, you've been beating us over and over again. If you're Illinois, why would you? You've been beating us over and over again. You got a coach behind you who's got a system, and it works. The running backs, they look the exact same as last year. Same thing with Minnesota. PJ Fleck, how many times have we seen it? He's not going to roll over for you. Whatever you think about PJ Fleck, he knows how to coach. Whatever you think about Deion Sanders, I'm telling you right now, he knows how to coach. Whatever you think about Brett Bielema, he knows how to coach. The list goes on in the Big Ten. There's a lot of good coaches in the Big Ten, so you got to be ready now. That's why I'm willing to give Matt Rule. If he doesn't get to a bowl game this year, it's going to surprise me. Don't get me wrong. I'd be awfully surprised, but I'm not going to raise the alarms yet. Well, that being said, though, that's all I got for you guys tonight. Again, shout out to Matthew Schaefer for joining me on the second segment. Excuse me, as I kind of tripped over my words there. Matthew Schaefer joined me on the second segment, winner of the Nebraska Amateur Golf Championship, the 115th annual Nebraska Golf Championship. Great stuff from him. Kind of just a story of don't give up. It's as simple as that, right? Don't give up on your goals. You're going to get thrown a lot of wild cards. I don't care how skilled you are, how successful you are, how much money you have. You're going to be getting thrown some wild cards in the mix, and it's up to you to just stay grounded. And Matthew Schaefer is an example of that. So again, shout out to him for a great interview, but that's going to do it for us. I'm Harrison Arens, wrapping up the show here on Ticket Weeknights. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night.